Welcome back, guys, to another episode of In the Trenches. Our guest today is a fellow filmmaker and photographer just like myself, but whose style is drastically different than my own. So naturally, I wanted him on the podcast so we can discuss styles. But before we get into the episode, I want to remind y'all, please like and subscribe, follow. The numbers really do help get this out to more people so we can keep this thing moving. So without any further ado, Daniel Chaney. Thank you so much, man, for making the journey out.
Of course.
I do apologize for honestly just now meeting you. You know, I did a lot of research on you and I'm like, wow, very impressed with your work and the director photographer side of things, which is me too. So again, I'm gracious that you're here. But I knew once Troy was telling me about you, it'd be like, okay, I can either choose to go meet you for coffee and shoot the bull for an hour and a half, or have you on the podcast with cameras.
I think this is better, because like I have done, I've looked through your work and stuff, but I mean I don't know a lot about you, and
sure. I
feel like this is awesome. Like this is the way to do it.
Yeah,
because everything's so fresh.
Absolutely, and to be honest, the podcast, this is by definition of what I wanted from the podcast, where it's like. And I do want to clarify that when I was looking at your work, I couldn't help but to notice your style, your interests are very different from mine, and that to me is exciting to talk about because I have a feeling it's going to go back and forth, So anyway, once again, thank you. So. Nashville. So how did you end up here? How did we let's get the early stuff out of the way so we can get into the good.
For sure. Born and raised here in Nashville. I kind of tell people like Nashville kind of grew with me. So by the time I graduated high school, Nashville kind of had already, that boom was just starting.
Oh, okay.
And so I was like, well, let me just ride this wave, see what's up. I've got some family in Los Angeles, so that was an option. I didn't end up going to school. So I was already doing kind of photo video work
early
throughout
on,
like middle school, high school.
Really?
Yeah, got just somehow picked up a camera. So my lifelong best friend, we took these like acting classes at this drama camp, like when we were kids.
Jeez.
And that was like the first time that I had been put in sort of this creative world. Like I was just like, man, this is really fun, because my dad is creative, but they didn't do like creative things. So
Just
I didn't
creative in
grow
his
up.
own.
Yeah, he's a very creative guy, but he wasn't like working in like the creative.
My dad too.
Yeah,
with woodworking.
And I think that's how maybe we got what we have. But so when we took those drama classes, I was like, man, like I feel like this is the world I want to live in. But I was not a great actor at all. So then we just picked up, but there were some like video elements to this class that we had. It was like this week-long class that we did for like 4 years. And so then we like picked up it. Our parents had like, the Sony Hi8 tape cameras.
Okay. What year was this roughly?
This would have been 2005.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know where I was. I'm just trying to.
Hi8 tape, that
I was
era.
shooting film. I was shooting pop,
Oh yeah.
I was shooting pop punk videos at
see
that point.
I got to see that work for you, because I mean, yeah.
We can talk about
it. Just re-release that today and it'll be like just as relevant as it was.
Yeah,
I
hear that.
But yeah, so we were making like Star Wars videos, it just goofing off.
Yeah.
I mean, terrible stuff. But I just remember thinking that summer, I was like, man, if people do this for like their jobs, like why would I want to do anything else?
What made you?
So fun.
What made you know that? What I didn't know. I had to go to like early film school to realize that it was you could do it as a job. How did you? I'm just sorry. I'm triggered by that.
No, you're good.
At a young age,
I didn't question.
I didn't put two and two together.
Yes, my parents were really encouraging. Like they didn't have any expectations for me. They were just like, do what you want to do. So I think that was helpful. But also, I just like, I was naive enough to think that I could just do it. Like, I was a kid, and I was just like, it was early YouTube days too. Like YouTube had just come out, I think like 2005, 2006. And we were just seeing videos being uploaded to YouTube. And that was kind of that whole early days of YouTube. And I don't think I was necessarily thinking of it from like a career to like make money. I was just thinking of it to like, I just want to do this forever and I'll figure out the money stuff at some point. And keep in mind, I'm still a kid. So,
sure.
But I just never stopped doing it pretty much. So got like involved at a church I was at. They were nice enough to like have gear and let me use it whenever I wanted. And
you were hooked.
I was hooked.
You
I
were
was
finding it and using it. You didn't care what the application was.
Not at all.
I'm doing it. I'm a director.
Yeah.
Scarf and all.
Totally. Yeah. And cameras, I mean, I was really into gear at the time too. So I was just like, oh my gosh. And like, this was, and then like when the whole DSLR thing happened, like I was like super in on all that.
That was the death of me.
That was
the death of me. We'll talk about it. Yeah.
Looking and nowadays, it's like I want what you had back then. I was like, if I could just shoot film for everything and just like, I think we like to make it more complicated on ourselves for some reason. But yeah, I mean that it was just kind of. I feel like there was always something fresh and new and exciting, and that just had me hooked.
Yeah,
all the time.
I see that in your work, by the way. I see a creative person who wants the camera in their hand, and it looks like you want to be working at all times. Is that something that is in your work? You know, I mean, like,
yeah, for sure.
What gives you that feeling? I feel like when I look at my work, I feel like there's this constant commercial application to the result.
Yeah.
With yours, I feel like there's an internal love to have a camera and to always be snapping around you.
For sure. Yeah. I feel like for me, vibe has always been like the number one thing. It's like and it's not a necessarily right or wrong way to approach it. I just have always
it's your style.
It's my style, right? In style, in like vibe and aesthetic. And that's for whatever reason what has driven me kind of more than anything else. I feel like I see old like photographers like Martin Parr, for instance, and a great photographer, and the colors and like the way he frames and that is really when I started to discover sort of these older photographers, not even in the video world. It was mostly in the photography world. And I was like, I want that, but I also want that for video as well. I want to translate
one of my questions.
This for video. And I think that was like, that's what really drives me creatively, is to get these sort of frames, whether it's in photography or video, and to really have one frame kind of.
Yeah, your design. I'm going to describe what I see from yours. I see a vintageness to it, something that brings you back, and you want to tap into something emotive, something nostalgic. Your frames are very deliberate. Your style is very stylized. You fill your shadows. Where mine, I live in the shadows. Which that was the first thing. I'm like, where's his shadows?
Yes.
Where are his shadows?
Yes.
You know what I mean? And you fill it. And I love that
thank you.
about you, because I can't get myself. You know what I mean? Because
you
know
you
that
100%.
feeling when you're this is kind of cool, but it's not me.
Yes.
I can't do it. You know?
There is some work, not to interrupt you, but I see that is very moody, and I love it, and I try it, and I'm just like, why doesn't it look like that? So it is a balance for sure.
Yeah. How would you describe your own work?
Yeah.
Was I far off?
I think you nailed it. Yeah, for sure. I mean,
I can dive in, but I want to hear you.
Yes. I would say just nostalgic. I think there's something about, I don't know what it is. But I don't know if it's like millennials or even Gen Z. I mean, your generation too. I feel like there's just like, you just long for like the simple times.
Sure.
And I feel like there's something about that I try to navigate like in my work. And I think here's the way I'll put it. I feel like I was born in 93, and I feel like I kind of missed sort of maybe the golden era of film and all the way things used to be. And I feel like, even like if you look at architecture today and design today, and everything's very minimal, very not colorful at all, you know. You look at like Miami in the Art Deco district, and you look at, you know, LA and some of these cities, it's like very colorful and vibrant. And I feel like, and also living in Nashville, I didn't experience that sort of architecture and design and sort of
definitely not
vibes. So I feel like maybe it's because I just didn't have it. I always wanted it, you know. And I mentioned earlier I had a family in LA, so I went there when I was a kid. I was like 5 years old, and being out there really stuck with me, like aesthetically, because I was just saw like palm trees for the first time, and just this really interesting architecture that I hadn't seen before. And I think that always just stuck with me. The pastels.
I mean, I did screw up when I described your work. I should have put first color.
Yeah.
I did notice color because color is huge.
Yes.
I almost wanted to be a colorist, a film colorist.
100%.
Before I got into anything.
It's the most fun part.
I love color. Okay. But yes, I can see this. I'm interested.
So that's pretty much it. I feel like it's just like all of that sort of like ideal, what I see in like an ideal world. I almost like to create a sort of world within a world, if that makes sense. Like if I can sort of, whether it's like with like a set design situation, or whether it's just like a really cool location that I can, in Nashville too, there's cool enough locations where if you frame them just right,
you got to get in that pocket. Though.
Yeah, you've really got to. Yeah, it is. It's getting harder all the time too.
I can't. I don't. I'm out. I'm on the outskirts now.
For sure. Well, you're not missing anything, because I'll see something really interesting, and this was especially back in like, you know, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, when Nashville had a lot of older buildings still kind of sitting around. I would be like, oh, this feels good. And then like 2 weeks later, it would be like fenced off. And I'm like, there goes that location.
Absolutely.
Probably won't get to shoot there.
Especially for your work and mine, where I do, there's an obsession with the four corners. I know it from yours. I can tell it. I know that you now, like me, when I pull the camera up to my face to shoot, the first thing I look at, I scan.
Of course.
I look, and in that moment, my brain is quickly analyzing. I have an obsession as the filmmaker side of me that I love my horizontals and my verticals to be where they need to be. So I'm, as coming from the film era of directing, I know how to, I can get my parallels and my verticals, horizons fast.
Oh yeah.
And that's there. Then I'm looking at backgrounds, what's getting hit by light, you know? And then the very last thing is the subject.
Yeah.
Is that how it is for you?
I feel like, that's very true. Even like, so I work with my wife, Kat, a lot, and she does like styling and production design and stuff like that. And she fills in a lot of the sort of practical gaps of my work, because I'm just looking at, you know, is the framing cool? Like, is it feeling right? And then she takes care of like, if there's like a model, like what's the model doing? How are they sort of posed? And you know, all the maybe what people would say is the more important stuff. No, versus I'm just
then you and I are I'm loving this conversation, because two people with extremely similar processes, I guess you would call it.
For sure.
With two completely different styles.
Yeah.
So that's fine, because I'm very much like that. I oftentimes joke around, and I said, was the actor's eyes opened or closed? I don't know.
We don't know. We're not looking at that.
I've done all of this work to create this moment, you know. But I feel like my work, in regards to what we're talking about, I really do care about the scene.
Yep.
I'm environment.
Yes.
You know, because I'm trying to not only get the artist, but I'm also, where is the artist? What is happening?
Yes.
So it's kind of photojournalism in a way,
yes.
but also being the director side of me and loving lighting and stuff. I spend a lot of effort making my work not look like it's lit.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
Having and obsessing about the frame. So you're allowing, hopefully, then the moment to feel real. So you're basically just containing lightning in a bottle and hoping it happens.
Yeah,
that is really much a lot of how I go about it. It's unique to me.
Yeah, I might be biased, but I think that's the best way to go about it, because I mean, you work with a team or a crew for a reason, and if we can focus on how we do it, then you got other people there that's making sure all the other logistical stuff is taken care of, and it's going to be a great result. It's gonna be great.
Now, do you something that when I was writing my notes, I'm like, I went a little heavy on this.
That's cool.
But I know the people who are listening or watching or whatever would be interested, because so much in photography, and it applies for directing as well. So there is the exact parallels. But let's talk agents.
Yeah.
Is it a necessary, and I do call it an evil. You know, I personally have not had the best outcome with agents except for one.
Yeah.
And it's just the one I started with, Tommy Labuda, and everything else has been more or less I've experienced the do all the work and we'll sign the dotted line kind of thing. Sure. But what says you with your journey with it? Did it come to you or did you seek it?
So good question. I sought out representation because I knew there was something there that I wasn't quite like you
couldn't
know
reach.
like there was I couldn't quite reach it, and I was like, what is it exactly? And I'm fortunate to be in a really good relationship with my agency, because they aren't, and this might sound cliche or whatever, but they're not like a typical agency. They're really here. They're really there for me, and they do a lot of work behind the scenes, and they aren't sort of this overarching sort of presence that's always like, let me know everything you do all the time sort of thing, which I've heard agencies can be like that. They're awesome in the sense that like we'll throw ideas back and forth. They'll try to get me things here and there. I'll send them sort of bigger projects.
They're working in your best interest.
They're working in my best interest.
Right?
Yes. And if someone hits me up to do like some little side project or something like that, it's not like I don't have to be like, hey, like I'm doing this whole thing, and they're like, oh, I want to get involved and kind of pull strings.
I've experienced this other side of that.
Sure.
So that's really awesome on your agency.
Yes. They're just like, cool. Like if you need us, let us know. Like they've like produced stuff for me. And they were just
probably
like,
not made a big check on it.
Yeah, for sure.
Just
they're
to
like,
build your work or to get you to do this job, to get you in a door that they might know.
For sure. Exactly. And they come from a production background. So they're like, you know, there's been some projects where it's like, should we bring on a producer and do the whole producer thing and make it a whole thing? And it's a tight deadline. So it's kind of like, it's going to be a whole thing, you know? And they're like, well, we'll just take care of it. Like I'll communicate with everyone. I'll make sure locations are good. And so it's been like, I'm like, wow, like that's awesome.
Well, let's go back then, because I love that. Let's go back to what made you feel like you needed one, like the reach. I agree with you. Almost all of us feel at some point, could I be doing more?
For sure.
Okay. There are side effects to having an agency, or not a agency that's working for you. Yeah, because you said it right there a second ago. I had, it gave me a pit in my stomach. Like you have a Southeast rep, but then you get a friend of yours that's calling for a job, and it falls into that category, and they want a piece of that pie.
Yeah, for sure.
So I left all of mine.
It can get complicated.
I left all of mine. I don't have one. I haven't had an agent in well over a decade.
Cool.
Well over.
And I would say that's not a bad thing. Like,
it's different.
I think it's very like, and so I'll kind of explain what's been good. So I was never good at like pitching myself in the rate that I feel like I could get. I always felt like there's a lot of that sort of pitching yourself, sort of.
Let's talk about that.
Money sort of world.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Do you feel because A, the job you're going to go do, you want to, B, it's not really that hard. I know what to do.
Totally.
So therefore, you add those elements and you feel guilty to invoice or whatever, to bid at the rate that kind of makes it feel like going in strong.
Yeah,
you kind of are going in weaker, saying, well, I don't need the gallon of milk. I'll get the quart. Okay.
Yeah.
And still trying to overserve.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Okay.
Always. So, and a part of that too is that sort of fear of like, well, this is what I do for a living, and I could use the money, So, it's that balance of like, how do I navigate this? And it's just the agencies has been good for me because it's like it does add that legitimacy of like, talk to my agency, and they're like handling all of that.
Sure.
And I think people do take me a bit more seriously in that sort of context. Maybe they always did, but now I feel like
you can stay good cop.
Yeah. I can stay good cop, and I can just kind of focus on what I need to focus on. And it's been very helpful in that sense.
So you run your jobs through your production company or the agency that you work for? Yeah.
So jobs are run through them. And there's something else I was going to say about it, but maybe it'll come to me.
Well, I one of the things I also had to, for me, it was almost a necessity to leave everything and start my own production company, because now you're making the production markup as well.
Yeah, exactly.
And to control how things can get done. And for me, it was always to control it so that the money can hit the screen and it just, so it works efficiency. I think a lot of people do get scared when they have agents because you're more or less at their mercy. Have you ever dealt with that?
Fortunately,
in the sense of like money and budgets, and you feel like, wait a minute, what's
this has just been a sign of I guess how good the agency has been for me. Is that they have always gotten me way more money than I would have thought that it would have gotten.
That's awesome.
They're just great at just saying this is what it's going to take, this is what it costs, let's get these costs figured out, and they're just like really, really good at just
that's the best
figuring
answer I
all
could
of
have
it
ever
out.
heard.
Yeah. So it's been beneficial in every way.
So before
far.
you had them, would you say it was? Could it have been maybe both, but fear or not fear, whatever, that dilemma of charging what you serve, but also maybe not knowing all the things you can, and therefore you're doing it a bit more DIY.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
it was definitely take the line items out, and therefore you can afford it.
Yeah, it was definitely an education thing of just not knowing all of the ropes, all of the, and also it's like. And it might just be how the creative side of me. I'm just like, I just want to do I just want to focus on the creative, and then I have to go to these emails with like 1,000 stuff and all these documents and I have to fill out all this. It got to the point to where I'm like, man, I don't know if I want to be doing all this stuff on this, because that's it's like the death. That stuff is always going to be the death of me. Like my wife Kat, like I have her do as much of the what's the word? It's like just the paperwork, the admin stuff. Admin stuff for me, administrative stuff for me is kryptonite for sure.
Yeah. Again, another thing that we both have in common, it's restricting. Numbers freak me out.
They're scary.
To be honest,
I'm not a numbers guy.
At a certain point of being screwed over the years and feeling screwed and run through the mud, I've developed enough calluses and scars that now I forgive but never forget kind of thing.
For sure.
So I'm better at it now, and I'm learning.
Sorry, not to.
Hit it.
The thing I remembered about the agency as well is another reason why I wanted to get represented was because I wanted to dive more into like the commercial world, sort of like creative commercial world.
That was me too.
Yeah. So I was like, I'm doing all this work and I know I'm only scratching the surface of like budgets, and this agency, they're based in, the main guy, Noah, he's amazing. He's in Oregon. His team's in LA. So they come from a commercial background. So I was like, okay, let's try to figure out the commercial side of things. Cause music, a lot of work I do like in the music world and stuff like that. It's a lot of it's just because I'm in Nashville, and it is the most, working with artists to me, like is the most creative way to work living here. But if I can take that same approach, but in the commercial realm, I mean,
do you know of the photographer Eve Assad? Yasad?
The name sounds familiar, but I don't know.
You should check her out.
Okay.
I'm reaching out for her on the podcast.
Oh,
a
cool,
friend
cool,
of
cool.
mine, she just had a baby, so she wanted to go through that process
Yeah,
before. But
yeah.
she was a music photographer, lives here,
Okay.
and I love her. She made a wonderful transition, and she's a really high end car photographer.
Oh, sweet.
It's
That's
really
amazing.
it's really good too.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So and I thought of you on that. You know, that's what she does. Do you feel like you what would be the difference to you? I know we'll talk about it, but like commercial set versus a music set.
Yeah.
Do you feel more pressure on the commercial set because you have to answer, and you got more human beings sitting behind you versus music? Go play.
I know, for sure. Yeah. I feel like the music, artistry, label world is peanuts compared to, commercial stuff. But the way I like to approach it is, I have my style and I have my sort of overarching sort of vibe that I can bring to the table and offer. And I don't think it has to be one thing. Like, I love editorial and fashion. I love artists. I love, the commercial world. And as long as I'm kind of bringing my style to each of those, I think it could kind of read similarly. I think there's different logistics when you're, in different pockets, and definitely more like in the commercial world, there's going to be more people above you wanting more specifics, stuff like that. But I think if I can, like, as a director, come in and be like, this is the overall style we're going for. This is sort of the camera movements that I want, and I don't want it to necessarily feel like a typical commercial, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like, let's try to make it feel the Daniel Chaney style, but still serve its purpose in the commercial world, or in the editorial world or anything like that. So I think, I don't know if that answers
that answers it, and it brings up another question. You touched on it earlier, because I went through this as in my work. Because I think that was a good transition to talk about. We dove pretty good into photo, but now
for sure.
The other side of you is directing.
Yeah.
But I want to walk the line for a second.
Yeah, for sure.
You said earlier you did. It's a wealth of conversation. You want your photo style to mirror your directing style.
For sure. Yes.
Okay. Did that naturally happen, or did you have to? Which came first,
Yes.
and then you had to? Because it.
Great question.
For me, and we'll throw it back onto me when you're done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, great question, and I love this because this kind of is how I started to go from a photographer, videographer to like photographer, director, the making that professional switch. So I started shooting. So I actually got my start in video.
Okay.
I did. And again, this was just low end videographer style stuff for the first, middle school, high school years. And then I picked up really got into photography like my senior year of high school. So I was like, they're one and the same. Why not just try to, shoot photos? And I always liked the idea of photos, didn't know anything about photography. And then I started shooting film. And that is what really opened the door for me, because I was loving the results of my photography and I was not loving the results of my video work. So, and then in 2016, I started shooting 120 film, like medium format stuff. And that's when I really found like my style.
So would you say it was easier for you to learn and perfect the style that interests you in a single frame?
Exactly.
To then reverse engineer it, hopefully in time, it takes a minute to then get it into your video.
Well, because, if you think about it, right, you're shooting a medium format still, and then you're going to your small sensor camera and you're like, how on earth, are we getting these to look the same?
Yes, and I have said it forever that directors that want to start directing, go shoot.
Yeah.
Go shoot photo. Why? Because you can go shoot photo every single day. You cannot go direct every single day. And you can learn almost everything about what you love as a director from going through a very inexpensive, time-consuming, which is necessary, process to learn it in photo to then put it there. So I wanted to throw it back at you because
I agree. Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I think photography is the reason why I even would consider directing, because photography is so you're focused so much on, like, even street photography. You're walking around. I mean, you're just like the process of elimination you have to do is so extreme, and you're constantly like narrowing, and like you were saying, you're looking at all four corners of the frame. And in a director who doesn't have that experience, I just feel like maybe it would help them a lot.
It's funny you say that, because here, as we say our styles and marrying them too, my video sets are very unique now. And they're looser.
Yep.
I have music, house music playing. Every time that music comes off, new music comes on. I'm walking the room. I'm walking everywhere. PAs. I'm talking to everywhere, creating a vibe, making sure everybody's good. Because I've already done the homework. The blueprint's done. I've already done it leading up to that moment. So everything else is the vibe and the process.
Yes.
You know, and that's how I do my photography. I came the other way.
Yeah.
You see, I was a director. I mean, I was a young kid. I was shooting pictures.
For sure.
But where I really learned the craft, I learned the craft young.
Did you start as a DP?
No.
Oh, wow.
I was a director. I did Bone Thugs on Harmony, writing A Good Charlotte, writing Exhibit, Eminem.
That's
all
amazing.
at 18 and 19, 20. I mean, all the pop punks. And then it was into Breaking Benjamin and Shinedown, all at Three Doors Down. And then it was hip hop, country.
Amazing.
So I came up through film, motion film.
Yes.
So I had to when I said earlier, I think when we first started, the death of me was DSLR.
Yeah, for sure.
I was one of the guys who was saying digital film will never go away.
Yeah.
And it did. And then when that DSLR came, that's when it really made sense.
Yeah.
And I didn't know, I wasn't going to be the guy showing up to a big
with the little.
I'm not. I don't understand that.
Yeah.
I'm used to 1,000-foot mags,
sure.
and you know.
Yes.
But I took a lull, a hiatus in my career to relearn, probably right when you were starting to move, because you came up in that era.
Yeah.
I had to relearn this new thing.
Yes.
I know it sounds weird for people to hear, but like that DSLR
Makes
moves different. Lenses are different. And then film people were always going, you know, we were all so precious and pure about our film. That camera obviously didn't hold the results image-wise to what film was. So we were all like shunning it until the Alexa came out. Okay, maybe
Well, I think what's awesome, and it's actually really interesting that you lived through that sort of what I would call just like a valley of like when new technologies come out. So I guess I'll get to the point is, I think nowadays we've realized that film and digital are sort of parallel. They can live independently, and they are completely different.
They're not competing. It's not like, okay, film's completely dead, now we have this thing. It's like film is there, and it's totally its own vibe, and it's so, you know, nuanced and stuff. And then even you're looking in Hollywood at the big films shooting on like large format film, and I mean they're doing that for a reason, obviously. And I think obviously digital is super cost effective, easier to get into, but they're so parallel now. But you were right in the point where it was almost like, it's obsolete, and now we have this new thing. Yes.
And then now we're finally at a point it's like, okay, well, digital's cool and it's amazing and it changed everything, but we still have the option on what we want to do and how we want to approach it. And I love to see the rise back, you know, in film here.
I do too. I also feel like maybe coming from the golden era, I can say this, maybe have a little bit of a,
you would know than anyone else.
But I do get when people say it's like, you know, there's got to be, when you're shooting film, you got to get to the point, shooting motion film.
Yes.
Get past just having film run through the gate and running around with a film camera.
For sure.
Light film, art direct for film. It's a color for, you know what I mean? If you do all the things that was intended when film versus just saying, I shot film, and there is a emulsion to my work.
Yeah.
that's an emulsion. You know, like, oh, it's not hard. Get your light meter right.
Right.
But to light it and to block it and to run out of film or to only have 600 feet more film, and you got an hour and a half left in your day.
Yeah.
And it's 2 a.m. and they ain't open up.
Right, you're screwed.
I've been there.
Yeah.
And you're shooting like and you got to allow the film camera to roll, get it up to speed. So you're like, those.
No, and I feel like
those things I think need to happen when you're shooting film, and like really having a film crew as a DP.
Yes.
You know, I mean,
proper.
Yeah.
I know. I agree wholeheartedly. I think it is. The generation coming up right now in filmmaking and is seeing a lot of 16 millimeter and not necessarily realizing like this is hard to shoot, and you have to put just as much, if not more, work into everything to get it to look.
Go shoot a night scene with film and then expect, because see, that for me, one of the hardest things as a director, and you can clearly see it in my work when I finally, I wouldn't say embraced, because I was embracing, learned and understood digital. Coming from being somewhat boxed in with film, you know, your lighting, you can't, your subject goes too much off their little mark from their key light, or it's not going to work.
Right.
So your blocking is quicker, and if it's not, if it's long blocking, now you got a healthy budget, don't you? You got all those lights, right? And you got all that crew, all that rigging, you know, so your mode of directing and how you moved the camera to tell your story was drastically different to when I finally understood digital and how to move the camera. You can see it in my work. I don't even lock the camera off anymore. I love the movement of it and finding it. And I've had incredible DPs that just hit those moments. You're like, wow, I didn't get that in film. And so like, I don't really have an interest to shoot film. Like people nowadays, like, do you want to shoot film? No.
Like, no, I'm good.
I don't want the anxiety. I'm good.
Would you say the same reason shooting film, like you have to do it right and you have to light properly? Nowadays, you have cameras, you could go 500,000 ISO and you could just, it's almost the opposite of like, I don't need anything because my camera is so amazing. Would you say it's sort of the same situation where it's like,
such
it's
a
still
good
important,
question.
right?
Threw it back at me.
I threw it right back at you.
You did. You threw it back at me.
I
would compare it because I have been shooting the the Sony Venice 2, and like in Vegas on some videos and some things where your atmosphere is so well lit. Yeah. Wow, you can really pick it up and it feels something. So there is a comparison to when I said to the kids, what am I saying? The filmmakers nowadays wanting to shoot film and just kind of embracing the nostalgic of it. Man, I didn't think I was being caught on my own.
No, you're good.
Well, that was a good question.
Well, I could say like for the Venice, for instance, in the Arri Alexa, these are cameras that, I mean, let's be honest, they are capturing ridiculous images.
They are.
The dynamic range is insane. Like you can get
I
by.
Love it.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
I wasn't getting it in film.
You're really not. Yeah, it's and I didn't mean to like make that like a trick question because it really is. These certain cameras are like, I mean, you're just bringing it in to post light color pass already, and you're like, why does this look so good? This shouldn't look this good. It looks way
now
too
there
good.
is time of day. You know, I will say I'm not going. We map out our shoots because I don't like bringing in a bunch of cannons anymore.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I feel like it boxes my actions, and like I said a minute ago, I like to move that camera and have longer pulls in my edits. So, what was I saying? Fuck.
You were saying how it's the cameras is the time of day.
Oh yeah. Mapping out your day in the sun and using your location scouting is key.
Yeah,
I mean, I spend like I said earlier with photos, 4 corners. The locations are absolutely paramount to me. And then taking the time with your DP or your producers to know where that light's going to be So you can use the best of Mother Nature. Maybe your interior you need to augment. You need to help it out, fill in the cracks. But, it doesn't necessarily have to feel overlit or saucy.
For sure. I agree with you. I've been on, I've directed some stuff where the light, golden hour, and you're like tempted to like rig stuff up, but then you're just like, it looks amazing, and you're like, we're on a time crunch, let's just shoot. And then like the Alexa or whatever, it's just like, okay, this is too good.
Then let's talk about that, because that's interesting. Do we feel like the art of the craft has taken a different shift or a different pivot? Where I was saying earlier with film, you really, your subject is boxed in. I think on Exhibit, it was like 108 degrees of light on him on one of the videos we did for Get Your Walk On.
Okay.
Like it was right there, sweating, beaming, like
gotta be,
to get this certain look, so we can high key, crush the blacks.
Of course. Great look, by the way.
But that was what you saw during that 5 years of MTV or whatever, music videos. But to do that now, light is so sensitive to me. Yeah. That's one of the other things that I had to learn with the new regime of cameras and filmmaking is light sensitivity. We're talking about with how it's relearning a style. It really was. I had to relearn a style because I had a style through film, and I made it.
Doesn't really work.
It doesn't. No, that's why you try anybody. Someone says, "I want to." Even before we got on the podcast, you're talking about pop punk era, or videos or whatever.
Yeah.
Go do a pop punk video that needs to replicate wherever any one of these.
Yeah, for sure.
With an Alexa.
It
ain't gonna be. It's the way that you brought that the keys in, the light in, the negative fill. We had negative right
there.
Here.
Nice.
The camera wouldn't move. We'd be on a hi-hat lock direction. We would sit back and watch the thing go.
That's crazy.
That's the thing. There was a reason for that. Why? Because there was a look you were trying to get.
Yeah.
You never.
And that was the only way you could get it, right? It's even the lighting we have now, like aperture lights, it's just everything's so different. Like you can't approach.
Did you deal with that with your work with cameras? And I'm not a technical guy, but you do have a very unique style. And do you have a preferred thing? Because your style it has an indie quality to it.
For sure.
You'd be like, you're going to use the Alexa 35. I don't know. Do you need to spend the money?
Yeah.
How do you weigh that?
I'll probably get to that. I'll say I loved shooting Fuji 400H, the film stock, for stills, and they discontinued that film completely. They don't make it anymore, and that was my style. Like that film was so nuanced and so special.
In what ways?
The color, the way you would overexpose it, the way that it would just shift, and it's very hard to get that look digitally. And it's kind of almost the reverse of what you're saying, where I'm wanting these certain filmic nuances that you just can't get with digital. And it's imperfections,
chemicals,
and it's something. It's in the way like Fuji was. It was like every color would shift except the skin tone would be perfect, and you're just like, I love that about this film because it's just so aesthetically pleasing. And then when Fuji was like, we're discontinuing this film completely, which was a shock to everyone, I feel like, because it was their most popular film, that I'm like using Kodak now. Kodak's completely different.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great film. They don't, recommend you overexpose it. It's very like fine-tuned.
It has its own
this
temperament.
is how, everything about it is its own thing. And so that was hard. And I'm still trying to figure out how to shoot, Kodak in the way that I prefer the style. And I guess with like digital, it's hard to say, because I will say the Arri Alexa, for instance, is like the closest thing to film in the sense of just like color and the way, because even shooting 35 millimeter film, that's like a full frame equivalent with digital, right? So it's like it is the closest thing, but yeah, I mean, like you're saying with the indie quality, it is too clean. It's too nice.
Yeah.
It's too good.
Exactly. Too high end.
Too high end, which
that interferes.
Is cool, but it's
even if you're doing all kinds of crazy shit around your shots, you're not trying to give away the magic trick.
Yeah, for sure.
You know what I mean? It's just a style to how you're creating it.
Exactly. Yeah.
The brush you would be using would be the wrong brush, and I would think.
So here would be like my ideal sort of package, because now with the Alexa 35, they have that built-in grain mode, which looks a little bit more authentic than maybe throwing a grain layer in post.
Okay.
And then you throw like a vintage glass on that sensor, so at least you're getting some imperfections from the glass. And then you overexpose a little bit in camera, because you know me with the shadows being open, and then it's all coloring from there. So like that, from
so you want that latitude.
Yeah, I want the latitude. I want the option. I want it to be a little bit clean. Yeah, and then it's all coloring in post from there. But again, that's maybe not what you would do shooting film. So it's just different how you approach it and it's always a learning process of just like, how do I get this certain look on this certain project, and then just kind of figuring it out.
And so much about that look, do you since that is important to you, and it is important to me, and I obsess over locations, because you're not going to get that look if it's not baked into your location.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you shy away from exterior locations where a cloudy day is going to screw up your look?
Yeah, for sure.
You lose control versus some of your work I see in studios where you can now build, construct, and be microscopically that way. Do you have a preference?
Yeah, for sure. I think like very cliche, but like Wes Anderson, like he'll put things. I think his frames are all very intentional in terms of color. So if I am shooting, like if there's a location and like color's important, and like what's in your frame, how is it going to read as the end result?
Of course.
And I've tried to ignore that and just kind of shoot somewhere because it's cool, but then you're in the post process and you're just like, it just isn't reading, like it's not as like impactful as I want it to be. So now it's like same in your world, right? Where it's like every location is so vital. And if you're doing a set design, like the colors and the way it's laid out and everything, it all is going to enhance like that end result. You can't like take the color brown, for instance, and make it look like a prettier. No. It just is what it is, and you're stuck with that. So, but if you have like a red,
brown,
or a green, or a,
you see what I was getting is brown exterior with blue skies, but you now get clouds, and now you're like, okay, it
would be very tough.
Now you're dealing with dull, and okay, you can always crowd duplicate,
right?
Then you're. It feels off.
It's tough.
Do you want your work, photo work, to feel more seamlessly unaware of post or contamination with the computer, and you shot it and it just a little, you know what I mean? Like,
That's a good question. I feel like I used to be a purist, but now I am not. Now a friend of mine was telling me, it's like, why be a purist when you can just get the best result possible? Like, shouldn't the goal to be to create the best end result possible? And I was like, dang, like that's
and
probably
to explore your interests.
Yes,
as far as it can go. Yeah, there's things you don't want and you dismiss them. Everybody's different, but
yeah, because I think too, it's like if I'm looking at something that I created and it was done in its most purest form possible, but I'm not like 100% in love with it. Like, well, what's the point? So now it's like, I do whatever I have to do to make it look as good as possible. And a lot of that is some of that's pre-production, a lot of that's post-production. Like a lot of computer.
Really? Okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah. I make it to, I don't want people to know that.
Okay.
Like I don't want people to see my work and be like, man, like he really went to town. In
I didn't know that. I see
want it to
sparkles, but
feel-
then I'm like, or flares. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
that's a prism filter
Yeah,
or something.
that
Like,
was probably
it's still
in camera,
organic.
but-
It's still part of shooting through things or
Yes.
whatever. I didn't know because like, what would you say? Okay, let's throw it back on me. I'll initiate it. From looking at my stuff, what would you say that question would be? How do you think my work is? How would you describe my work?
That's a good question. You have a touch in your work that reads, that you are experienced, like what you're doing. It doesn't feel DIY. Everything's intentional.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing. Like
Sure.
I'm saying that as like
Sure.
an amazing thing. Like,
Thank you.
when other people see your work, if your work is lined up against other people's work, they're gonna be like, I don't know what it is about this, but it's just up, like it's got something to it. And I think I know what it is. I think it's that you have done so much. Let me know if this is true. Like, kind of shaving away things that you don't. And it's a process. And that's what separates. Whenever you look at someone from experience, or even if someone comes up to me and is like, how do you get it? It's like, it's a decade-long journey of like, I don't know what I like at first. Yeah. Like it's taken me 10 years now to even like know even more what I don't like. And the more, if every year you can shave off, okay, that didn't work for me. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do this. I'm going to do this. And then you just start to hone in on like, this is what I love. And this is what works for me, and then and then, so for instance, people see like one of your photos and they're like, it's so like thought out, like put together, and it like just makes sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
Do you feel like that's kind of where you've been?
I think you nailed it. I'm kind of speechless because that's a great way to say it. Is like, yes, through the years, through 37 years, you just learn it.
Yeah.
You learn what you like, and you learn because of that, you're not wasting any time
not at all
doing anything you don't like, and you're only diving head first in how to perfect what you like.
And it's as simple as like you're in a frame and you like pivot the camera, 5 degrees this way to get that more interesting thing. And then you're like, it's everything. It's how the people are in the frame. It's how it's oh, there's like a rock here. Like, let me actually just get the person to go move that because it just doesn't feel right. And it's all those little things.
Microscopic
things.
You're in your brain, you're looking. And I mean, I even on set, I tell everyone in the art and everybody, don't disregard me when I'm moving things.
Yeah, of
because
course.
I am living in this, and it doesn't mean I don't like it. It just means it doesn't need to be there. I know where it needs to be.
Yes.
But I'm very particular about all of that. One thing I wanted to ask you is I'm intrigued by, because you mentioned YouTube early on.
Yeah.
What was it about you or your film or whatnot? How did you not get routed to go down because you were interested in cameras and such? How come you did not get routed into the YouTube culture?
Yeah, for sure.
But versus a filmmaker, a photographer, a very designed.
Yeah, I think early
artist.
on, that's a good question. I think that's a great question. I think early on, I was, how we all are. We're just sponges, and like everything matters. Everything's important. You don't know anything, so everything you hear is a new bit of like knowledge, and you're just like, oh, like I need to watch this video. Philip Bloom at the time, if you remember him, was like telling us about DSLRs when they were first coming out, and I was like, I need to watch all this guy's videos because I don't know anything about any of this, So you're just constantly there. But a big part of YouTube, I liked the comedy side of it. There's a lot of good comedians and stuff. So. Or just like guys making sketches, like high quality sketches. And I was just like, man, like these are so well shot and the lighting's amazing. The audio is perfect. I'm like, and they're using YouTube as like a platform. Like YouTube definitely had a DIY thing when it came out, but then it didn't take long, a couple years into it, where it was like these amazing high quality productions were being like uploaded to YouTube, And I was really intrigued by that. And I think I liked maybe that side of YouTube, like the higher end sort of production side of YouTube. Maybe more than anything else. And then of course like the knowledge side. But yeah, I think as I feel like every artist is like this, where it's like the gear is important at first, like the gear is crucial, like everything you're doing, it's like crucial. And then you get to a point where you're like, maybe all of this stuff I thought was important isn't as important as I thought it was.
Yeah.
You know,
and I think you elevate
kind of,
beyond gear. You elevate beyond those things, and you get really down into the aesthetics.
Yes. You're like, if a guy in the 1970s took this photo, why do I need a camera that just came out to get? You know what I mean? You start to think like that, and you're like this. You know, and you're just looking at all this work and all these people's work, and you're just like, yeah, I mean, this is what I'm going for, and I'm going to do whatever I have to do to get there. And it might not. Gear at that point becomes like, maybe I don't need the sharpest lens. You know what I mean? All of it. And you know how it is.
Yeah, I'm already adding grain and shit on it.
Right. Yeah.
What do I need?
Yeah.
Do you have a preference over directing versus photography? In my crazy brain, one feeds the other, and luckily one comes in when I need it, and then when I get like, oh boy, I need a break. Woo, there comes this, and it's like, oh, left brain, right brain, technician, general of army over here, arty, and you know.
Yeah, I relate 100% to that. I feel like they coexist perfectly.
Yeah.
I love, like I just did a photo shoot, and it was very fulfilling and great, and then now I'm just like, okay, I need to direct something now. So they just are both very, very similar, but very different, you know.
For me, it was the photo. For me, I wanted the photo filled the void in between directing jobs. But what happened with photo was a couple things where, one, I was a student to it again.
Yep.
You know? And with that, you kind of absorbed the I don't know, the feelings of learning something from beginning again, you know?
Which is amazing to experience that after having been directing years and years and shooting, and then you're...
Yes, it was kind of, some of it was out of necessity, but also it was during the DSLR world.
Yeah.
And I had to relearn so much. It was a horrible year and a half of relearning gear and how does that work with a style?
Yes. Dude, yeah, I can't even imagine, because you're so in the trenches for years.
Yes.
Doing this thing
one way.
Then you wake up one morning and it's like, oh, by the way, this is what everyone's.
I shot a Shine Down. Shine Down Second Chance. Very big video. That was the first video I did on the red camera.
Oh, okay.
Which I don't shoot red, but we can talk about it. Red is just like Kodak versus,
100%.
Just a different stock of film for me. Yes. But anyway,
agreed.
It's heavy. Had an air conditioning fan in it. And it might have been just before Easy Rigs. And I'm coming off of shooting film, so I'm like, well, get the sticks and lock it in. But now it feels like a fucking Lifetime movie. What the hell? I don't understand. I couldn't. And I use that video as an example because it did crazy well. But as a filmmaker, that was the turning point of learning.
Yeah. Of
like going from film to red.
Yes.
And then, I say red because I wouldn't be caught dead shooting it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be caught dead shooting red.
But
that's about all I can give on camera gear. I'm not.
For sure.
There is a need to chat about it because you think, like we just talked about, Kodak versus Fuji. Now you got Sony Venice on the high end. Sony Venice, Alexa, and Red.
Yeah, and you definitely look at those as film stocks. Like I'm saying, like I definitely look at those as film stocks as well, because I didn't think digital could look that different. Yeah, they look so different. I'm like kind of shocked. Yeah,
and they look so different. A, on set, and then B, in the color bay.
Yep.
I would love that to be a clip on this episode, because it is true. If you can just let people understand the comparison of film to digital, Kodak versus Ilford versus Fuji compared to now, and digital would be the high end cameras. Where do you source your inspiration from, man?
Yeah, it's a great question.
I've heard it's kind of where I want to.
I actually know the answer to this. It just came into my mind because I actually had to think like, where do I source my inspiration from? When I'm driving around, just like around town or really anywhere, and I see a set. I'm like driving and I see this old building with like these shiny glass windows with like perfectly trimmed like square bushes, and I'm just like, that inspires me to create something. And
do you take notes when you're driving and take a photo?
For sure, yeah.
Dude, you and I are the exact same thing, but just what interests us are different, and how we came up in the world. That's so fun. Yeah, keep going. I love that.
Same minds for sure. I feel like, because I'll even be going through like a drought, like where I'm just like, not really inspired by anything, not really like feeling it, and then I'll just drive through a neighborhood and see like a house that's like very like postmodern design and very just something funky and interesting to me, and I'm like, I'm inspired. Like, cool. Like I just saw a whole photo shoot in my head, or I saw a scene of a music video or something in my head. That's just how it works. Like that kind of stuff triggers like entire. And I'll be driving, like when you're driving and then like 10 minutes later, you're like, oh crap, I've been driving for 10 minutes. Like,
well, you listen to music dangerous. Too. I was that kid on long road trips with my family, and I would just put the headphones on. But I was living these music videos in my head, and I'm watching the world drive by.
That's a great way to do it too. Like listening to a song that maybe doesn't have a music video.
That's my process.
You're like, oh, all right, like I need to pitch this to these guys.
I don't know if I've said this before, but a very big video I did was for Breaking Benjamin's So Cold.
Okay.
And it was down to the final night of trying to get that treatment, and I didn't know what was going on. I left. I lived in Playa del Rey in LA, and I drove down the hill. If you know, down there at the basin of Playa del Rey, at certain times of the night, it gets real foggy.
Ooh.
And I was just listening to the song, and I'm like, call up. I see it I see it as fog and this and this and that, and walking through, and it just all came to me by seeing this haze of fog through everything.
That's how it is.
One thing that is extremely important to me, I don't want to get off, because I have you here, and I think this is all extremely valuable information. Yes. How something that we're both probably not the best at, and so many people could learn from, and not that we're experts, but let's chat about it. Branding yourself. Being a brand. Daniel Chaney is important. Now, do you agree or disagree? Building the brand of
it's probably
how the world works and how you get your info really out.
It's probably the most important thing. Like I would say it's the most important thing. And I think a lot of it has to do with your body of work. And I feel like if someone comes to me and they're like, if they need help with branding or how do you brand, I'm like, your work is your brand. So you just have to keep creating. And like we were saying, like, the least common multiple, just get it down to like, okay, I know what I don't like now. And what you do like will always change, but you definitely will kind of like stay in that.
I know what I don't like.
Yes. And if you keep that going, and Instagram makes it easy. I don't know if Instagram's still like I feel like at one point it was like the destination for like portfolios,
Yeah.
I don't know if that's hugely the case anymore, but it was easy to sort of, okay, I'm only going to post to Instagram of like my work that is like the most on brand, I guess. Mm-hmm. And so that helped me out with Instagram. And I grew up right in that Instagram era, so it was like, okay, everyone's posting stuff to Instagram. Like, I guess this is what we do. And then it just became a very curated, very branded sort of feed sort of situation. And I think, that, translates to a website and all that. But I feel like...
Do you still believe in websites? Because it's secondary or third to now.
It is like no one's necessarily. I feel like I don't know the percentages, but someone like going to your social media has got to be like way higher.
Yeah, it's got to be.
It's like they're not going to your website.
Yeah, I looked at your page, bro. I love your work. I'm like, oh no, you really?
Yeah.
I've made the website exactly how I want you to go through it.
Yes.
I'm a website guy.
Yeah. Well, for me, websites are important because if you are, if it's a commercial or a label or something, if you send them your website link, they click on it and they have this like very curated, very awesome viewing experience right off the bat. I mean, you can't beat that.
No.
Like a PDF or an Instagram page, it's not going to do it justice. Like,
Agreed.
And so I think websites are important. I mean, it just needs to be the best version of your portfolio.
Refined.
That's all it needs to
Everything
be.
down to exactly.
Which, I mean, I'm not really one to talk because I just built my website from like, Squarespace, and it looks great and it gets the job done. Could be way better. Sure. But I still like the work on it and I still think it serves its purpose. But yeah, I mean, I feel like I love like if someone's like, hey, like, let me see your work. Like, boom, here's my website.
Sure. How did an artist we both worked for, that man,
Morgan
Wallen,
yes.
How did you worked with him on a photo shoot for Billboard?
Yes, correct.
Right,
correct.
Explain how that came about for other photographers and
Yeah, so I had done one shoot with them before earlier that year, 2023, and they liked the photos, they liked the work, and then they. Kind of that Q4 had just started and they just hit me an email out of the blue and they were like,
was
hey,
it you or your agent?
It was, that's a good question. I think because I had already worked with them, I think they shot me an email. Yeah. The lady at Billboard's awesome. So she just like,
that's cool.
Direct email sort of situation.
And how did that go? So is that did it come out how you wanted? Explain somewhat of the day. Does it a long time? 10 hours, 2 hours?
Yeah. A very quick shoot. I like to work.
I said that because I know pretty much it's got to be around 2.5 hours. Because all of mine have been 2 hours.
No, it turned out great. Yeah, they basically were like, hey, like we want to do something kind of more along the lines of your style for this sort of shoot. I don't think I had really worked with someone like Morgan. Like a lot of the artists I work with are, pop or color forward,
Sure.
A certain type of, and Morgan's like
muted and earthy,
and he's real country. He's real country, and that's amazing. And I was like, man, like real country, like I got to kind of hone in on like what that would look like. But one thing was for the styling, we were like, we definitely want you to be wearing, something slightly more elevated. We want it to feel a little bit more, it is for Billboard. So we wanted it to kind of be alongside their aesthetic a little bit too. So the stylist did a great job. And then, we were originally going to shoot at this really cool, like, it was like this motel and it had like this outdoor area and it was like this really awesome space. And we called them and they're like, oh yeah, y'all can just shoot for free. Like just come over here. But it was like an hour and a half away. And then they were like, well, it's too far. We don't really want to make the trip. So then it was like a couple of days before the shoot. And I was like, no guys, like it would be perfect. Like I'm already, like how I said, like I see the location. I was like, okay, the shoots might as well be done at this point in my head. So then, then it really sucks because you're like, okay, back to square one. So then I remembered this place that we had shot before, and I was like, it could work. And it ended up being a great location. It ended up just being great, and and the goal, was just to be as efficient as possible and just
editorial
right. Style. Yeah,
do they give you demand, not demands. Like, do you have minimum amount of captures you want to get, like setups?
So minimal setups. I will say, have you worked with Billboard before?
No.
They're probably like the best to work. They're very like, they just trust the artist that they pick. And I love that about them. So they have very little say in the process. At least the last two shoots with me, they were just like, like maybe if we get a couple locations, a couple outfits and just kind of send them, digital film, doesn't matter. Just do whatever you want to do. And I was like, whoa, like,
that's awesome.
That's kind of amazing.
But they trust you.
They do. And it empowers me to like deliver a way better result. You know what I mean? You know how it is.
Yes. Like, I say that all the time.
Yes.
Empower me.
Yes.
To think, like, give me the rope to show you what I can do.
Please.
Like,
and it'll always be a better result.
Don't put a restraint on it. I'm gonna obsess about it.
Oh yeah.
Now that you're giving me the reins, I'm gonna dive into this thing. Well, man, I appreciate your time, dude.
Of course.
Hey, Troy, do you want to do something fun?
What kind of fun do you want?
I don't know. Do we got music or we got trivia?
No, I got some trivia questions over here.
I like trivia.
I like trivia too. Let's.
I got schooled on the last one. But what is our era? Because we've been trying to do something to lighten up the mood. Just go out of the weird.
I love it. I love that. That's amazing.
Yeah, this one it's movies. Ooh. So movie trivia.
Oh gosh, ironically, I'm terrible at
that. What?
Yeah, ironically.
What? Yes. I can imagine you just locked in. Man.
No. There's so many movies I haven't seen. It's embarrassing.
Do we have an era of these movies, or just going?
I mean, I just picked the best questions.
Okay, great. All right.
Here we go.
I keep saying we need a button.
Number one. What 1994 crime film revitalized John Travolta's career?
Pulp Fiction.
Whoop. Pulp Fiction. Nice.
That was a tie. I did see pulp come out of his mouth faster.
You finished it faster.
Yeah, I had a quicker delivery. Okay.
All right, question 2. What is the highest grossing R-rated movie of all time?
Would it be... That's a good question.
That's a great question. Can you throw a rough era?
Yeah.
DC.
Oh.
DC Comics.
A Batman film? Is there an R-rated Batman film?
Spider-Man.
No, that's not DC.
The Joker.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay.
The Joker.
Okay.
You were there. I didn't even know it was rated R.
You were there. You were on a Batman. Okay. Oh, the Joker. Wait, the Joker?
Yeah.
The Joker with Joaquin?
I don't know which one it is, but
it's got to be.
It's got to be that
Joker.
one.
Wow,
Yeah.
I immediately went to Heath Ledger because that's so when he was the Joker. But no, I think you're meaning the movie.
I didn't even know. Yeah, because that movie was probably PG-13. So this is R. I had no idea it was R. That's crazy to me. Okay.
Have either of you seen Zombieland?
No.
A long time ago.
Yeah.
Okay. For what movie did Steven Spielberg win his first Oscar for Best Director?
E.T.
Nope.
Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Nope.
Oh, would it be? It'd have to be 80s, or unless it was late 70s. But I would feel like. Is it like a common one?
It's one of his bigger ones. Yeah.
Okay. Back to the Future?
No, that's not him.
It's with a list.
What?
Oh, Schindler's List.
Yep.
Good call. Wow, what a movie! I don't know why I was thinking more light heavy. I forget. I just it's such a great movie, but I dismiss it because it's
I was gonna say I looked at a list of Spielberg films like not too long ago, and like half of them I had forgot because they were just the more
intense
ones. I was like, oh
less fantasy.
Like, yes.
Okay, these are fun. I like these.
This is good.
Yeah,
it's good.
Okay, this one's a little bit weirder. What's the name of the anthemic dance near the beginning of the Rocky Horror Picture Show?
Got it.
I wouldn't know.
Loved it. I know. I saw the movie, but
The Time Warp.
Okay.
Didn't have it.
Good to know.
2 more.
What about Jurassic Park? You guys know that?
I should.
Okay. Who played park owner John Hammond in Jurassic Park?
Oh, his name? Oh,
good God. Yeah, I knew it was going to be a name. I was like,
names are tricky.
Goldblum, and that's about all I got.
Close enough, yeah.
What is it, Goldblum?
No, Richard Attenborough.
Oh,
I
didn't have it. One more. Here we go. Come on, make it a good one.
Yeah, a good one.
In The Matrix, does Neo take the blue pill or the red pill?
Red pill.
Yep, red pill.
Yes.
Okay,
because he goes to red.
Yes,
the red is the below Earth, and
yes.
Blue felt like clouds and fantasy.
Yeah. Good way of
that was a quick one. But
yes,
Daniel, thank you so much, man.
Thank you. This has been awesome.
This was so much fun, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. You're amazing. This is probably the best first podcast experience.
Really? Your first?
This is my very first.
At first, I was a little like, okay, we have very different styles. But what I loved about this was we are so similar.
So similar. Yeah.
Like all of our little idiosyncrasies.
We're always,
those is a little weird. We get.
You know what would be crazy? You're married?
Yeah.
Our wives would probably be like, oh, yeah. Oh, they're the same.
So many people are like, you got to get your wife on this podcast. I'm like, oh, boy, I don't know. Awesome, brother. Thank you so much.
Appreciate you.